Time for work.
Hi. Hello.
Yep,
Can you help me with something?
I'm working. Later.
Okay.
You see, every day we attempt to do our work, but we always seem to encounter distractions. We can spend more than a few minutes before we either get a work-related notification or somebody interrupts us with something they need from us. And we get interrupted from doing our work. But it wasn't always like this. When we used to have industrial jobs that required our attention but weren't fairly automated, distractions weren't all that important or all that prevalent. Given that what you had to do was already muscle memory, there were little to no distractions that would interrupt our ability to do what we were doing. But nowadays, we live in an idea-focused world. Our work is no longer mainly with our hands, at most with our fingertips, but mainly with our minds. We've moved from the conveyor belt, working with a hammer in our hands, to sitting in front of a screen all day with a keyboard being our weapon of choice nowadays. On the other hand, this transition towards this idea-based economy has generated more distractions than any other generation has had to experience. Our ability to make use of data and generate stimulating digital content that's optimized to keep us engaged is also robbing us of our ability to focus. The flood of notifications, of never-ending bits of information, of highly curated feeds that are strictly there to get our attention are keeping us away from the one thing we have to do: sit in front of a computer and generate ideas. But it wouldn't even be all that bad if this highly curated content wasn't getting shorter and shorter. If this hyper-frantic bombardment of spaces that require our attention wasn't also diminishing our ability to stay connected. Our abilities to stay attentive have been getting shorter and shorter. Our mere ability to stay on task, to stay with a problem, has been diminishing rapidly in this hyperactive hive mind of an always connected world. And we could say, it's because of these short-term attention applications. It's because of Vine and Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok. And yes, they do contribute to keeping our attention spans shorter and shorter and to our needs to always be ingesting dopamine in some form. But what can we do about it? Welcome to Hyperfocus. Hyperfocus is a concept coined in Chris Bailey's book called Hyperfocus, but you may encounter this idea under many other names like flow or focused work. The idea is very simple. The gist of it is that you choose a task that you want to dedicate your next chunk of time to, you designate a space where no distractions can enter your focus, and dedicate your whole attention for that chunk of time strictly to doing that task you've set out to do. The list of side effects may include better work being done in less time, more time to spend with your loved ones, better quality of time when not doing work, a much calmer and more enjoyable life, the ability to not be rickrolled. Okay, I may have lied about the last one. So we've said roughly what hyperfocus is, but we also need to talk about what it isn't. It can definitely improve our quality of life, but it's not going to solve all of our problems. It's not about ridding yourself fully of social media, but rather being more intentional with your use of social media. It's not about never talking with your peers, but rather having your communications on your own time, when you are not highly engaged in your work. Now for a quick tutorial on hyperfocus. Step 1. Identify, predict, and limit your distractions, both in the physical surroundings and your digital space. That may mean wearing noise-cancelling headphones, closing your windows, and putting a do not disturb sign on your door. It may also mean cleaning up your space and moving any game or declutter space around. It may mean closing all of your notifications or allowing the focus feature on your phone or on application on your browser. The important thing is to know how it's possible to be distracted and eliminate as much of that as possible. Step 2. Identify the task you want to focus on and break it down into doable chunks. If your task is, for example, a presentation, you might want to break it down into information gathering, information analysis, information breakdown, putting that information in the actual presentation, reviewing, and getting external feedback. Step 3. Identify a chunk of time where you can work on that one designated chunk of a task you set out to do. Also, you may want to put it on your calendar in order to set that time as time strictly for that task. Step 4. Get to work and focus on that one thing you set out to do. Step 5, and you may think I'm crazy, disconnect. Take a proper break. Give yourself time to intentionally defocus. And now for some suggestions. I'd advise you start off small. Do not attempt to go for a 4-hour uninterrupted chunk of work. That will quickly lead to a negative spiral. Maybe instead go for 15 minutes. Set your timer even lower than that, and even after that time has gone off, continue to do your work for as long as you can. Don't overdo your work. Not all of the time spent on work can or should be hyper-focused time. There is a time and a place to be semi-focused or completely defocused. For example, when you are ideating or brainstorming or evaluating your work. Attempt to spend less time working. It's estimated that at most we can put out 6 hours of consistent hyper-focused work per day. The time you do work, actually do spend it strictly, fully focused on your work. But after that allotted time is done, give yourself breaks. Let yourself completely disconnect from work. Also, don't limit hyperfocus to strictly your work. Expand your ability to be fully present, to be fully engaged in whatever it is that you are doing, and let it spill over to other areas of your life. Let it elevate your interactions with others, as well as the time spent with your loved ones. But you see, life is not all rainbows and unicorns. It's great to strive for a world of no distractions, but in real life, distractions do happen, and you need to be prepared. First up, we can set up rules about how we work. We can decide that you'll only check notifications twice per day for 30 minutes each time. But at the same time, you can have rules or procedures for how others interact with you. You let others know that if they want to reach you for a conversation, they either have to pick up a slot in your calendar or they have to wait until 4 o'clock when it's your designated conversation time. But that doesn't really always work. You may have to negotiate it with your peers. Maybe your time is really required in meetings that aren't really contributing to your final output of ideas, but maybe instead of the 4 hours of dedicated focus time that you wanted, you may arrive at 2 hours that nobody will tend to screw with. Let others know that you will not be looking at notifications or re-engaging in long back and forth message streams, and instead, for such conversations, you require an actual phone call to settle whatever needs to be settled in less than a minute, instead of settling in like 5 minutes, but over the duration of the whole day of reconnecting and disconnecting from the subject you are dealing with. Sometimes stuff does get over our attention walls. Sometimes we do get distracted, either by the endless scroll on our phones or by the people around us. And yes, it is uncool that it takes roughly 23 minutes just to get back on task, but such is the reality of life at times. You can either choose to stick with the rules that you made for yourself, to learn from what happened and to better apply your attention limits for the next time, or embrace the distractions and embrace the conversation with your peers or the phone call with whomever it may be at the other end. You see, there is a place and a time for focused work, and there is a place and a time for focused leisure. Whatever you do, may you be fully present in your life. See you when I see you.